For the first time in a couple weeks, we are back after a W. 49ers beat the Patriots at home. Beat them score-wise was a pretty wide margin of score, and the yardage-wise was a pretty wide margin for yards. But Rod, here's what I have as our big theme, our one-sentence summary of the game, and I want to get your thoughts on what if you agree with me or if you disagree with me. The injured 49ers play a very sleepy game against a very poor football team and still get the win.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. It was not a clean performance by any means, but it's kind of like I found myself at the end of the game, like you looking at the stats, and it's like the defensive line did some really good things. Nick
Yes.
had a really good game. The entire defensive line played well, but then it's like the caveat is the Patriots' offensive line stinks.
Worse than our offensive line, and our
So I
offensive
mean,
line was bad today.
it's one of those things. It's a get right thing. So I mean, it's the fact that they dominated. They're supposed to dominate against inferior competition like that. It would have been even more alarming if they hadn't um done well. So and that was the theme throughout. Was there was a long time there where we didn't have an offensive touchdown. It was Fred's touchdown
Yeah.
that was the only touchdown for a good chunk of the game. So I mean, again, a win is a win,
Yeah.
and they were pretty much in control the entire way, but it's still far from clean and far from this Mike Tomlin always says the standard. It
Mm-hmm.
That is, there is a standard that we have come to expect from this team, and we still aren't playing to that standard.
It is hard to blame the offense on missing Christian McCaffrey when Jordan Mason seemingly runs for 100 yards every game.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm watching this and I'm wondering, okay, what plays are they not calling because these wide receivers could not get open in this game? I know the Pats have a surprisingly good secondary compared to the rest of their team, but there were moments where Brock had like 10 seconds and he just couldn't find anyone, and he's just running around. And when he starts running around, I know some people get excited because like, oh, he's a playmaker. I don't get excited. I immediately think this dude's about to take a hit, and I want
Mm-hmm.
to see him take a hit. But do you think it's simply Christian? Do you think it's some of the defensive coordinators kind of not figuring out Kyle, but maybe understanding what Kyle likes to do and taking some of that away? Is there anything that you could figure out while you're watching the games?
Well, the one thing that it seems clear to me is that Brock doesn't have Christian there as a safety valve, in the passing game. Juice kind of served that role a little bit, but again, when they go three wides, Juice is the one who kind of comes off the field. So
Yeah.
it's a catch-22 with the emergence of Juwan Jennings. What that means is Juice doesn't play as much. I mean, it's just you can only have 11. So when you take when you bring when you play three wides, it's one tight end and usually one back, and so it that creates one less player. And it's just the facts are that Jordan Mason is not the receiving threat to Christian McCaffrey is, and that's no slight to him.
Yeah.
Again, we've said it before. Christian McCaffrey. I don't forget who the announcer was, but it was a cogent point. Christian McCaffrey could probably be an All-Pro slot receiver if he wasn't a running back. He's just that good. So you're missing that whole chunk of the offense. And while Jordan Mason is effective, it's different. It's just it's not the same as having the Swiss Army knife that Christian McCaffrey is.
Yeah. No, it's pretty as I'm watching, it's sort of clear that he 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 is kind of like, if all else fails, he's going to be able to you're going to be able to drop the ball off to him. And so they
Mm-hmm.
have that right now. JP made a nice catch and a nice move. And you kind of wonder what would change if you just did some of those Christian things with him. Would it
Again, I don't. Yeah, I'm
This
sorry.
this might have been the team to do it against, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, they were struggling in parts of this game, and maybe JP's one catch was maybe a McCaffrey play, because I thought he looked really elusive. He caught the ball well, made a cut, made a move. He felt today like I was really, really comfortable when he had the football. I was like, this dude is moving forward. He's making a cut, he's making a move. And he has become, and I think Greg Olson said it on the broadcast, when you do get McCaffrey back, you do have somebody who you could put in and who you can rely on to let McCaffrey take a couple reps off. And that has been a problem for them, is he just doesn't want to come off the field, and maybe to his detriment. I I just think when I see JP, I'm like, this dude is running very confidently. He believes that he's going to make a play, and I thought that was very adamant. I thought he made that very apparent today in the game, and I just thought, I wonder what would happen if they decided to do
Just
something Christian like with
just
him.
turn him loose. Yeah. And that's true. Maybe he can handle it. I don't know what the apprehension is about doing that, but it's definitely his role is different than what Christian's is. But the only question, again, I believe that he has proven himself as a definitely a competent second back. And for some team, he would probably be, even this team, if there wasn't Christian McCaffrey, you'd be happy with him as your starter. Now the question becomes for a young player is when it is different and now he is called upon to spell Christian. It's different starting the game than it is. I've heard basketball players talk about that, moving, it's being a six man is a skill. I mean, not everybody, it's not something that, oh, you just come off the bench and you play. Guys that do that well, like Jamal Crawford and those type of guys, there's a mentality that goes with that. And some guys can't do it. Some guys aren't able to. I know famously, it took Carmelo Anthony a long time to be able to adjust his game to that role. He had spent 15 years,
He's probably
you
still
know,
bitter about it right now, and he's been retired for a while.
he had spent 15 years, coming in, as a starter and being able to just be into the flow of the game from the beginning. And now you have to, it's like, okay, you're out here now, go. It's not, there's not much of a feeling out process that you kind of get as the starter. So that's going to be interesting to see. Again, it's some one of those things that people might, think about. And you might just think that it's seamless. But some people, aren't able to do it. And I'm not saying he can't, but it's different when you get 20 touches and you get into the flow of the game as opposed to getting 5 touches, interspersed throughout the game. So
I would,
it'll be,
if they
and
do it, I would love to see the creativity of putting them both in the game and then lining up Christian in the slot and having Jordan in the backfield, and then watching the defensive coordinator go, "Oh shoot, what's going
mm-hmm,
on here?" And then you can give the ball to Jordan, or you could run some sort
mm-hmm.
of little trickery with, like, just
And then it's the
just keeping
thing,
the defense on their toes would be really interesting.
and you expound on that by when you have Debo out there, it's I understand why Kyle is. It makes it a lot easier to get into his bag when he's got Christian and Debo out there at the same time because he can play all kinds of games with the formation, and those guys can end up literally anywhere um, in the offensive formation. And like you say, if you go ahead and run, a two-back set, it's kind of the same thing. And even in that, it would be nice that if at some point they flanked out Mason, and
Mhm.
you can play a lot of games with it when you're at full strength, and hopefully we are getting there. And I hope we'll talk about that a little bit too, about where you're at on Christian returning.
I saw, and it's the biggest news of the day outside of the game is Christian. They're going to ramp him up supposedly this week after last week, him being in Germany, which we learned on Monday. So the idea that this is where injury stuff. I get it. These guys don't want to show their hand, but like I said during before the season started, I felt like they were a little dishonest in how hurt he was.
Mm-hmm.
And so now he doesn't play for misses first 3 games. Lynch told us we just need to keep him off of his feet. We need to get him to stop trying to rehab this thing. It needs rest. And then he goes to Germany. So jumping from he needs rest to the blood cycling or whatever the idea is around the cells and stuff of why you go to Germany. That was a leap that I was surprised about. So it just continue. It feels to me like I'm just not going to believe anything they say because they keep kind of covering up what the story is for whatever the poker reason that they do. And now they're saying, "Oh, we're going to ramp him back up in practice." Well, last week you said he needs to stay off. Then he went to Germany. Now he can come back to practice, and you're going to put him through hard workouts. It doesn't really make that much sense to me as far as this timeline and what we're supposed to believe and what we're not supposed to believe. But then I forget the writer. Someone wrote it this morning. The idea is to get him back in November. November is 4 weeks away. So you're telling me that this dude is not coming back until week 8 or later.
Well, that's what I thought, you know, prior to the ramp up thing was after the bye week. Because even, okay, you ramp him up this week. So I wouldn't think he'd play Sunday. So then he's not going to play Thursday. if you don't play him on Sunday, you're not going to bring him back on a short week.
Yes.
Then you have the Chiefs. Then you have the Cowboys. So maybe one of those 2 weeks. But then you got the bye.
Yeah.
So I think I'm not expecting to see him till at least November 10th. That's what
Which,
I think.
which is fine, except the message from the team has been all over the place. If in during the preseason, week 2 of the preseason games, they're like, nope, Christian is not doing well. We're going to put him on IR and we are going to condition him to be ready by November. We're going to give Jordan Mason the snaps, X, Y, and Z. At least the fan base has an idea like, oh, okay, like we get it. He's more hurt than we realized. And now, he's going to, we're preparing for the second half of the season with him. There's a lot of people who bought and paid top dollar for season tickets who expected to see Christian McCaffrey playing at home for their money. And he's not playing right now. So again, I don't know if they were being purposely dishonest for poker reasons so that teams couldn't prepare. Maybe they thought there was an edge there. These poor, I don't even want to say poor, even though I know you are someone who likes to dabble in the gambling. These people who bet Christian on all of these different props, thinking that he was going to play, and he's clearly not playing. I would be really mad about that because of all
Yeah.
the information that we had. So
And, knowing gaming the way I do, it to me it kind of it kind of smells like somebody knew something, and that's why the line was set so low, and I couldn't understand it. But now it all seems so clear now
Yeah, yeah,
that that 10 and a half, over 10 and a half touchdown number. It's like this has to be a trick line. And yeah, it really it really was a trick line. The other way, we were the trick.
yeah, exactly. All right,
Mhm.
so before we get to our what we liked about today in the win, I wanted to make a couple of mentions. First of all, we when Brad and I started Thompson to Clark, that was before we brought the 49er podcast in. We had a Twitter handle, Thompson to Clark. Like that was our first Twitter handle. Then at some point we got the BSPN one as well. We deprecated the Thompson to Clark. We sunset that Twitter. We're just going to focus on the BSPN Twitter. And what's going to happen for that is we're just going to have more stuff going on. So at BSPN Media, if you if you follow Twitter, if you're on Twitter, give us a follow at BSPN Media. We will follow back all Bay Area sports fans for the most part. Um, and we're just gonna have more stuff. We're just gonna do more stuff on that Twitter account. And soon we stream this show on YouTube. We will start streaming on the BSPN Twitter account as well. So we'll start doing that. You can't do it on a normal account, so you have to have a little bit of a premium account. So we're going to test that out for a little while and see if we can get any traction from streaming it there as well live. And then BSPN_media is Instagram. And Robert Ramos, our friend Robert Ramos, was sending me videos of the live touchdowns. And so we put those up on the YouTube as shorts. We also put them up on the Instagram as reels. If you want like the crowd view of what was going on and how people were hyped. And Robert actually caught, they were both on the opposite side. He was kind of sitting kitty corner to where those touchdowns were, but he was Johnny on the spot with his record button. So we put those up if you were interested to see the home crowd and how they were reacting to those plays. I think it was the Warner pick six and then Brock's touchdown, that little fade touchdown to Kittle, which more it was like kind of like more like a jump ball to Kittle in the corner of the end zone. So those are up there on YouTube and on Reels.
That's
Okay,
what's up.
let's go to our things that we liked, and I'll let you go first. I'll let you throw your first one out there.
Okay. I'm old school. I like have notes. Well, the first thing I liked was the Warner pick six.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he is just so much, and it's funny that Olsen was talking about it. He just didn't hit on the fact in all of his praise of Dre Greenlaw, he never hit on the fact of what I think Dre Greenlaw is he sets the tone. He's the
Mm-hmm.
heart of the defense. Warner is clearly the most talented player. I would say he rivals Nick in that department in what he is able to do, both as a pass defender, as a pass rusher, as a run defender. I mean, there are no holes in his game. And again, that that play, just the play alone was ridiculous. The athleticism that he showed being able to make that play. But I mean, it really did, we hadn't scored we two times into the red zone and we, came away with field goals. And so he led off the touchdown scoring and it was just I thought it was a big play in the game and it clearly got everybody fired up and that's what it has been in the recent history is the linebackers seem to be the guys that do
Mm-hmm.
that get the team fired up. Normally it's Greenlaw who does that, with some of the things that we've talked about on this pod where he's right tippy toe on sometimes over the line in terms of his aggressiveness, but his teammates love that shit. He doesn't like, I'm sure Kyle doesn't like the 15-yard flags, but his teammates really get fired up when he gets fired up. And I thought that play today was one of those type of plays where he read the quarterback and jumped it, and and then took it to the house, which is just it was just I was thoroughly impressed.
And people might be wondering because they saw Warner come out of the game. It's so funny to me, like Warner hurts his ankle, and the way that he comes off the field is he just jogs off. I'm like, dude, isn't your ankle hurt? Why are you jogging off? I guess you don't want to create anxiety by taking the cart or whatever, but I'd take the cart every time.
Oh, hell yeah.
He hurt, so he got an ankle injury, and he said, and this is a Cam Inman on Twitter has the quote. It was all based off feel. It'd take a lot for me to tap out. We'll get more information as we go with scans, but I feel good right now. And then Matt Mayoko wrote that he'll likely have an MRI on Monday. So he literally said that if he could have played, he would have. So he had to come out of the game. It was that big of an injury for him. So I wonder, we see these injuries sometimes, and the players are so nonchalant with them that you're like, he'll be fine. Like, and so I do wonder if he may miss some time, because he basically made it sound like there's a reason why he came out. So it wasn't just like this, this nagging thing. It was like a painful thing for him. So I'm not saying that he's going to be out, by the way. I'm just saying, based off of how sometimes this happens, I think these guys are fine. And then all of a sudden they're, in a walking boot the next day or whatever. So they're really tough dudes normally. And then when the adrenaline wears off and you go, oh yeah, like my foot's swollen. It reminded me, I've mentioned on the baseball podcast, Thompson and Clark, that I was listening to the Bo Jackson audiobook by Jeff Pearlman. And you remember when Bo was on the Raiders and they're in a playoff game, and basically his hip goes out and it ends his football career. It happened in the playoffs against the Bengals. He got up and walked off the field, and all of the media thought that he was going to be fine, and he was saying that he's going to be fine. And so they hold him out the next week, and that's when they got killed by the Bills in the AFC Championship game. And the media was really hard on him for missing, and the dude literally had
Never played again.
a dead hip, and tried to he came back and played some baseball, but it just was not the same. So when I think of like injuries, it's like these dudes are tougher than a $2 steak, as Jim Ross would say. And I just hope that for his sake that it's not that serious, because not that Arizona is a world's greatest team in any way, and they got waxed by the Commanders today. But still, Kyler Murray scares me every time we play against him. So I'd hate to see Fred miss a game, but this is a long season.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and again, you look every week and you try to figure out what's what. The NFL is anymore. Anybody can get you any week, so it's not the type of thing where you can just like, oh, we'll just rest this guy because we got to. I mean, if that's gonna happen, it would be a game like this where you would do that. But in division, the Cardinals are alive, dog, especially with our defense it was okay today, but their offense isn't any great shakes. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I don't, obviously we should err on the side of caution and be thinking long instead of short in terms of his health. But if he can go, we sure could use him. I know that for sure.
Yep. All right, my first one on the things that we liked. Kevin Givens and Malik Collins. There were moments in this game where I was like, they can't block these dudes. Like, these guys are just coming right up the middle, and Jacoby Brissett is like running for his life. in the end, in the fourth quarter, Nick turned on the burners, and then he was the guy. But I thought in the middle of that game, there were moments where not that I thought that the Patriots were going to make a comeback or that they were going to score in any big way, but I was like, okay, they're getting these weird kind of just fluky third downs, and we're missing a tackle here, and Ramondre Stevenson didn't even really juke, and Mustafa's like out of the picture, gets flying out of the picture, and I'm like, this is interesting. and and then Collins and Givens are just bull rushing through the middle, and I was like, man, this is amazing. Where are these guys? And I think Givens ended up with 2.5 sacks, and Collins had 1.5 sacks for guys who were not necessarily going to be responsible for a big part of the defense based on where they were in the rankings. And because of injuries, and I think Jordan Elliott also got hurt today, so they're worried about him. They're hoping it's not ACL related. Those guys stepped up. Now we did say this is against probably one of the worst offensive lines in professional football. Like Jacoby Brissett, I don't know how this dude's going to last, more than a few weeks, the way that he's being hit. But they took advantage of what was there, and I thought they both had really good games.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all you could ask for is they really they stepped up. They really did. Again, I heard a little bit before I came to set up. Kyle was talking, and he said that they're gonna do the MRI on Elliott, but they've kind of ruled out ACL. But they don't know for sure what it is, but they don't think it's that. So that's good news. At least that's good news because we are super thin up there, and if you look around the league about the guys who are out there when defensive tackle injuries, they're just recycling old dudes that are like 15 years in the league. Some guys that have been out of the league, I forget who it was, on another team. They had signed somebody, he's like a 15-year vet who didn't go to training camp and was like ostensibly out of football, but big guys are just who can play that position are just hard to find.
Yeah. All right, what's your next one?
My next one is the balanced offensive attack. 32 rushes, 27 passes. We're effective at both. It was, and it wasn't just, like moving the chains. Brock hit him with several explosives. Mason had a couple of explosives in the run game. It was just, I felt, a well-called game. The offensive line was a little leaky. Brock, I thought he bailed a couple of times on the line when it might not have been necessary, but I couldn't blame him for feeling the heat because it had been kind of leaky all game.
Isn't that what Man Bun Mark said last week as a quarterback? He said, they talk about happy feet. Every quarterback has to deal with it because you kind of have that clock going on in your head, and sometimes it doesn't jive with what you're seeing on the field. So, and I thought
these guys are getting there. These guys are getting their ass kicked. I need to protect myself.
Yeah.
Which you can't. I'm not mad at him for doing it. It's just that where it gets frustrating to me is when he does it. And it's completely understandable when you're feeling the heat. Sometimes you feel it when it's not there. It's phantom pressure. But it's not based on anything in his head. It's based on experience. He's seen the last 3 times that it has been real pressure. So, I can't blame him. But I was very impressed with with just the overall balance. Again, I think what you said in your open was apropos, that it kind of had a feeling of going through the motions. Sort of, but um, they were effective, and I
Yeah.
again that's all you. I mean, really, all you could ask against a subpar opponent that they weren't so laissez-faire that they really gave the Patriots any kind of hope, really. Um, so yeah, it was. I was very impressed with the balanced attack.
Is someone so I think it was Davis, our friend Davis, who sometimes checks in with us. I think he wrote on Twitter that this is the first time the Niners had beat the Pats at home in a long time. Like I think maybe in like 20 years or something like that. Did you
And
hear that?
that no, I did not hear that, but it kind of makes sense. Through the Brady era, it was rough sledding against those guys. And couple that with the fact we didn't play them very often. But I think I might be mistaken. I can't say that for sure, but I know Brady came back as a Buck, but I don't think he played more than twice here as a Patriot. And I know we played back there a couple of times, and those were kind of shit show games.
Well,
So
what
yeah,
about that? Remember that That was it a Sunday night game? Kaepernick in the rain, and it was like they were up big, and then Brady started bringing the Patriots back, and it was like this back and forth, like really high scoring game. I just remember Kaepernick, putting 40 or whatever or something like that on the Pats
mm-hmm,
in like a really good game. This is the Harbaugh years, obviously,
yeah,
when the Niners were high and mighty
exactly.
back then.
Mm-hmm.
But that was interesting because not that I really remembered the Patriots coming here that often, and not like the Niners have this like big giant rivalry with them either. But that I was just trying to remember. I was like, yeah, I don't even actually remember a lot of these games. Um, to add to yours, my next two, obviously, we already talked about him a little bit. It was just Jordan Mason. I thought he was really good. There was a couple of times early in the game where I thought, okay, like they're throwing too much. How about let's just see them stop him first? And then he picked up in the fourth quarter, especially when they just needed to ice the clock. He had that run around the corner that got him to, I think he ended up with like 123 yards or something like that. But also, now, if you're going to look at Brock's stats, and I think he was at 72% completion percentage before the game started. He was only like 15 of 27 today. So not great from that, but he took shots.
Yeah.
They had the big shot down the middle to Debo. There was like a 30-yard pass to Juwan. There was another one. I think that maybe it was over BA's head or something. I think I'm going to just call BA this year for the rest of the year red draws because of him with the shorts last week. Um, you know, I thought this was going to be a game where like Brock was going to get him involved, and he made a couple of good catches, but he still was only 2 for 48, so still not there with BA. But I just like the fact that they were taking shots down the field, and they hit a couple of them, and that we don't usually see that. It's more the intermediary stuff, or like they were saying, Greg Olson was saying, the yards after the catch is kind of their thing, and they are the worst in the league this year, yards after the catch, which is kind of insane to think about.
Yeah, BA, it wasn't a big number, but again, I heard a stat this week. I didn't fact check it, but it's Mina Kimes, and I ride with Mina. So she said that BA led all receivers in the league in um separation percentage, and
Yes.
he is getting open at a higher rate than any other receiver in the league. And now his numbers haven't jived with that. But apparently, those people that watch the film say that he's playing really well, and so it heartens me to know that that is happening, because what that means is at some point it's going to all come together.
Yeah.
Last weekend wasn't the week because JJ went off, but yeah, so it's not like he's playing terrible, um, and not getting numbers. Like even last week, there were a couple times where Brock just flat missed him, where he was like just wide ass open. So it's coming. I think it will be. He'll make his impact felt before the season is over.
There is so that stat that you're talking about is called it's a fantasy stat that they have used the acronym of average, separation, and then score. So I think that acronym was only created so that someone could just call it ass. But yeah, like I listened to the Ringer Fantasy guys. I like their show. It's a bunch of young dudes, and so they're entertaining, and they talk about this stat a lot. So that's the first time I had heard about it, and then I heard what you said about that. Mina said those guys had said that last week, which I thought was really interesting. So average separation score, Brandon Ayuk was first in the league for wide receivers.
Yeah.
Okay, what about stuff that you did not like?
Let's see. Can I give you one more that I liked?
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Just because I'm always pretty hard on this guy. Jake Moody's perfect day.
Yeah.
Shout out to
3 for
him
3.
for that 3 for 3. That's all
What
I'm gonna
about
say.
Joey Sky hitting from 63?
Woo! That guy, he even with that little short time he was here, it was like he couldn't make 30-yarders, but he
Yeah.
can make 50-yarders. That
Yeah.
was the maddening thing about him is from long range, he's money, but then when you give him a chip shot, he's all over the place. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was a big kick. I mean, I've been there. There was a kicker, Jason Hansen. He kicked a 63-yarder, I believe, against the Rebels when I was there, and it's cartoonish. That's so far away that
Yeah.
you can't even you can't fathom somebody kicking a ball that far.
I mean,
But
you're
I
a
was
hair
listening to
behind.
Red Zone today, and they were talking about the proliferation of 50-yarders.
Yeah.
It's like 50-yarders are the new 40-yarders. I mean, everybody's making a ton of them.
Yeah, you're like right at midfield if you're kicking like a 63-yarder or something
That's
like that.
crazy. And then it's the other thing of now that was at the end of the half. But when you do that, you just give the team such good field position. Yeah, so you got to really believe in your kicker to try that.
Yeah, it's really like a end of the game kick or end of the half kick, because you're not going to do that in a game where you're worried about the field position just for the mere fact that he could miss, and then like you said, they're already
Right.
at midfield. All right, well I'll start then. I'll start with my things that we didn't like. As if you thought special teams was going to improve this week. ... Our guy Garendo is like, and see, the thing about it is like I'm thinking of Garendo and I'm like, oh, maybe he's just not a kick returner, but he actually was a kick returner in college. He ran right up his offensive or his blocker's back, and it was almost like the blocker's back pad, shoulder pad or something caused the fumble. I don't even know how the fumble came, but that was not a great look. We had money making Mitch at the end of the first half, just punting a short one to help the Patriots get in good field position. Jacob Cowlings had a couple of punt return attempts, and he went more sideways than anything else. Actually, Juice had the best punt return attempt after Cowlings got hurt. And then they also had a couple of punt returns that went for good yardage. So I didn't think that. I thought like special teams was just as bad as it was last week. There was no Jacob Cowling, sorry, not Cowling. But yeah, I thought it was just as bad as it was last week, and that was with a fake punt that that was successful last week. I just like, man.
Yeah, it's another one of those things that it didn't bite us in the ass this week, but it's something that we just need to get cleaned up. If we're trying to get where we think we belong, um, yeah, it's not good. It's just not good.
All right, what about you?
Red zone efficiency, 2 for 4 in the red zone, field goals instead of touchdowns. We just, you know, you just think about what a difference, 14 or even 10. And then if you tack on Fred's pick six, 17, it's just different than 13. Um, we just have to be more efficient. We were better on third down this week. Actually, no, we weren't. I'm looking at it now. 7 for 13 is still 54%, which it's not great. It's just not. But yeah, the red zone, we've gotta make teams pay down there. And Brock is playing great otherwise. It's just like we get to third down and then it stalls, or we have a penalty, or it's just it always seems to be something as to why we're not being more efficient in those times where efficiency is the most important.
Yeah. All right, my next one is the same one as Shelvin's, which we talked about the offensive line, but specifically the pass protection. I don't like seeing Brock pushed out of the pocket so often.
Mm-mm.
Some of it is, yeah, he can make a play with his legs. He throws very well on the run. I get all that stuff. But when my guy has to reverse pivot to his blind side, there's going to be a moment where he doesn't see something coming that is going to be bad news for him as he's doing that reverse pivot. And I'm just like, you're doing it too often. You're successful with it, which is probably why he's comfortable doing it right now. He picked up another 2 first downs today. And then there was another moment where, he's kind of waiting and holding, and then he throws it, and then he leaves himself a little bit unprotected. Now in today's NFL, it's not as risky as it would have been when you and I were younger.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I would just rather, like, he knows where the pocket is. He knows where the pass rush is coming. But there seems to be an instinct of him to go outside rather than to step up. And maybe it's because he is not 6'5", so he
Mm-hmm.
probably believes that stepping up is going to make the throwing lane a little bit harder for him. But man, I'm so worried because Josh Dobbs and I think Josh Dobbs could probably play a pretty good game with this team. But I don't want to see it happen. I
Mm-mm.
want to see it be sort of the emergency only kind of thing. I don't want Brock to get hurt because he would rather create an opportunity instead of throw the ball away. He is like that. That is the kind of player who he is. But if he's going to be the quarterback of this team, and if he's going to make $55-60 million a year, whatever it is, we need to stop some of this. Like I'm okay maybe with it happening at half as many times as it does, but these last 2 weeks, he's running way too much. The last one from last week that we were talking about, they tracked it for 77 yards of him running around and trying to make a play. So it just happens too much, and it's just too risky.
See, and that's the thing with me is what you just said. The last part is it's more about risk mitigation than anything else. Can he make the plays? Sure, he can make the plays, but I don't. Is it worth the risk? Is the upside of whatever, like last week? It ended up being a 3-yard gain. That's not his exposure to being hit all that whole time. It's just not worth 3 yards. Just get down, throw it away. I can't believe I'm saying this, but be more like Alex Smith. Just get to the next play. That in small doses. Now that can't be your whole game. That was the problem
Yeah.
with Alex. Is it was that was every play was just we would just check it out of bounds. And Brock clearly can make plays, but I would prefer him to make them from the pocket. Or again, you talked about stepping up. Um, I think again, I've talked about this before. If you give him the interior offensive line that makes that possible, Drew Brees was one of the best ever at operating and moving. He was, his movement was in the pocket. He would move up and make the play rather than always sprinting out. It's just, for smaller quarterbacks like that, there's nothing good ultimately can come. I mean, you can make plays and that's beautiful, but all it takes is the one time. And we've seen the fact that we go as Brock goes. And
Hmm.
if he is out for any significant time or out for an NFC championship game, it's not a good look for us. It's just, he needs to be um he needs to be out there playing, and
Yeah.
anything that risks that is not worth it as far as I'm concerned.
All right. What else for you?
Penalties. It it wasn't as bad as last week, but still it was in crucial moments we had them. One in the red zone, one on a third down. It was just those type of mistakes. They just kill momentum and can be part of the reason why your third down and red zone efficiency isn't what it needs to be. If you're adding 5 yards or 10 yards um, to third down, it's already hard. It's third and manageable. When you take it out to third and long, the percentages just go way down. So we just need to clean that little stuff up.
Yeah. Some of those penalties were really ticky tack at the same time and almost were like I can't only blame it because the Patriots got called for that one as well on that third down play where they caught the pass and threw the backwards pass to um to get the third down, but then they got called for a hold or a push in the back, I think.
Hmm.
But yeah, some of those were pretty questionable. But against a better team, they would have been something that we would probably talk a lot more about on this show. It's just the fact it was the
Absolutely.
Patriots that it didn't really hurt them, but yeah, that's 2 weeks in a row where in inopportune times they're getting flags thrown. So I mean I don't know. I don't know if you're Shanahan like you see it, you know what's going on, you're talking to your coaches. It's not like you have 2 a days to get this stuff, the practice schedule's much different today. So I think it's probably just more about um, certain technique or whatever, or just hey, they're calling this more than they have been, which is why there are more flags. Just be a little bit more aware of this. Like the one on George, I'm not sure. I guess it was the jersey grab that maybe the referee thought his hand was somewhere further than it was on the jersey grab. I'm not sure
Hmm.
about that one, but that should have been a touchdown, and that one got called back, and they were really upset about that one. But yeah, it's not like just because we don't believe that they were actually penalties, they're still getting called. So
Right.
okay. Um I didn't really have another one, and if you have another one, let me know. The only thing that I thought was kind of sloppy was the end of the first half and how that went down, and then the opening turnover, which allowed the Patriots to score on back-to-back play, like in a matter of minutes. And that was pretty sloppy. Like you don't see really good teams handle those situations. And that's like the opposite of what Shanahan wants, because he wants to score and then he gets the ball back and then he scores again. Like
Right.
that's his thing. And it
Hmm.
absolutely worked against the Niners on this one.
Yeah. I don't really have anything else other than I was gonna mention I would like us to figure, but at this point, other than putting Debo out there, I don't know what we have to do with like the punt return game. I guess we're just going to be satisfied with, if we can just get them field, that would be great and not fumbled. It would be nice if we had a returner, and I don't know. I don't know. It seems like one of those things that we talked about last week that we just don't seem to put an emphasis on. It's not something that seems to be a priority for the team.
Yeah,
Um,
Matt
and
Barrows. Matt Barrows says that Kyle's mentality is just don't screw anything up. And when you have that mentality and you're not trying to make plays with your special teams, you're just playing very defensive and passive, that you aren't making plays, but then when you're giving up a play, it just looks
yeah,
even worse because you can't
yeah,
do anything.
exactly.
All right, let's talk about the blame pie of last week. When the Niners win, it is not a blame pie, it is a credit pie. How did you split up your credit pie this week?
I gave 45% to the defense. The pick six, the pass rush, 6 sacks, and then a bunch of quarterback hits on top
I
of that.
I think I saw that Nick had 9 quarterback hurries or something like that today.
That's crazy. They were poor Jacoby Brissett. They held him under 200 total yards, 3.5 yards per play. That's crazy. Yeah, it was the defense definitely set the tone. Especially, and they started the touchdown scoring, and then I went 40% with the offense. Um, the the run game, they dominated time of possession. The it was balanced like Kyle would want, damn near 50%, 50-50 run versus pass. We hit some chunk plays in both facets. Great game by the offense. And then 15% I gave to Moody. And that was even with that last punt was kind of shaky, but overall Wisniewski's money making Mitch, his yards per punt wasn't awful, but yeah, he was still a little sloppy with the fumble and all of that, but I gave him 15%.
Here's some interesting stats. So Brock and JP lead in yards passing and yards rushing. So they're both number 1 in the NFL at their respective positions. And here's just, some Brock love. Most passing yards in the quarterback's first 25 career starts. Brock Purdy, number 1. Number 2 surprised me. Jeff Garcia, all time, first 25 starts of his career.
Oh wow.
He's number 2. And also, one for JP, most rushing yards by an undrafted player. This comes from Nick Wagoner. Most rushing yards by an undrafted player through the team's first 4 games of a season in NFL history. 2010, Arian Foster. 2004, Priest Holmes. 2024, Jordan Mason. So Mason is like less than 30 yards behind the first 4 games of Holmes in 2004. If you remember, if you were playing fantasy football back then, Priest Holmes was a beast back then in fantasy football. So Jordan Mason is in elevated status there for his first 4 games this year. Okay. So last part of this show before we talk about next week is our player of the week.
I want winners. I want people that want to win.
So who do you have as your player of the game?
I had several candidates. Could have been Brock, could have been Nick. I went with, I think for the second time this season, Fred Warner.
in half of a game.
Yeah,
He had 7 tackles in the first half.
7 tackles, a pick, a touchdown. Yeah, it was, and I mean, it wasn't just like your run of the mill pick. It was beautiful how he read the play, jumped it, and then turned into offense and took it to the house. So yeah, that's my guy.
Yeah, that's a great one, and you could throw like Nick Bosa was he was working hard to get his sack. Like there were 2 that he was in on that he was trying to get credit for that were not him. I think he had an assist on Evan Anderson's sack. And then there was one where Jacoby Brissett actually gained a yard that Nick was like trying to get credit. He's like, yeah, that's mine. No, dude, it's a 1 yard gain. But then at the end there, he got the strip sack, fumble recovery, all in one. It was an awesome play, but it was also kind of garbage time, and they were just teeing off on dude. So he was bringing it, and you kind of sense that he was getting a little frustrated because he was getting there, but not quite. And he finally broke through at the end. And then, Jordan Mason, of course, on a longer list, had a really good game. He had the 1 touchdown and the other one that was taken back. And yeah, so next week we have the Arizona Cardinals, who did not look fantastic today. Jaden Daniels is the truth, at least early in his young career. He is the truth. And Commanders fans have to be absolutely head over heels for this dude. So they beat Arizona 42-14. And he is 26 of 30. Jaden Daniels is. And his completion percentage, I think before the game started, was maybe like 80% or something like that. So he continues that. And Kyler Murray, Kyler Murray had a good game. They just were not in the game whatsoever. Like you look at the stats and you're like, wow, like Arizona, their counting stats looked fine. They rushed for 181 yards. Kyler was 16 of 22. Seemed like a lot of short stuff. I didn't actually watch the game. I saw some highlights. But man, Commanders ran away from these dudes, and now they are 3-1. Arizona's 1-3. And they've given up 106 points in the 4 games so far. 49ers at home Sunday afternoon. It's another game in which they should take care of business. But I would say that if they played the same kind of game that they did today, it'll probably be a little bit closer against Arizona just because of the fact that Kyler can make plays. He's got Marvin Harrison Jr. James Conner is going to, James Conner and JP are kind of similar in that they move the chains like they do. So I think the game is going to be a tougher game, and I think they will need to play a lot better to beat the Cardinals like we think that they should beat the Cardinals.
It's going to be interesting to see how we go about defending Marvin Harrison Jr. because he is a matchup nightmare. He's just big and fast, and he's a new age receiver. And it's gonna, like I say, it's just gonna be interesting to see what we decide to do. Are they gonna try to man up Mooney with him? Or are they gonna try to zone him? I mean, how are they going to crack that nut? I'm interested to see that because him and Kyler, Kyler is played pretty well against us. I just don't want to see them go off and jump us because at one point I think going in this game we were like 30th in defense. It was not pretty at all statistically. So we'll see.
They were giving up the most yards per play.
Yeah, that's not great.
Can I say one thing which makes last week's loss feel even worse? Did you see they lost to the Bears, the Rams?
Oh. Yeah, they were, and that's the thing that's so disheartening is we did what we were supposed to do offensively against them. They can't guard anybody, and JJ's 175-yard game is just, proof positive of that. Yet we figured out a way to let them hang around and steal one in the end, which is like you just said. And I think we're gonna go back. We'll look back around week 15, 16, 17, and that will be one of the games that we will wish we had back. We should have beat them dudes.
Yeah, totally. All right, we will be back next week after 49ers and Cardinals. Hopefully they can get some good injury news. And I know Kittle was also kind of banged up at the half, but he did play in the second half. Crossing our fingers on Fred, Jordan Elliott as well, and hoping that people who are injured currently, like CMC, we need some good news, man, because 2-2 out of the gate is fine. I'm completely fine with 2-2 out of the gate. But these injuries and the inconsistency in the play is a little worrisome, but it's a long season. I think the injury luck is a big thing for this team, especially with how many consecutive seasons they've gone into the postseason and just added games. So, all right, we will be back next week. Thompson to Clark is tomorrow for the end of the baseball season. Brad and I will be back talking about the way the Giants ended and the postseason in baseball. Kind of be pretty interesting. And Shohei just went off. And so we'll talk about all those things. Aaron Judge too went off. And so that'll be tomorrow. Thompson to Clark, probably live streaming around 5:30 Pacific is my guess. That's usually when we do it, but sometimes Brad's schedule could be a little wonky. So, all right, next week, Rod and I will be back. So for Rod, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.